Oh, it's just all the AIs.
Ah,
Oh,
man, if they want to record, they can. I don't care.
I think that's fantastic. It's for posterity, man. What did I see the other day? It's like if you make an Instagram post, it's like turning on a 20-watt light bulb for life. It's like because it's always going to be in there someplace.
It's a way for you to be immortal.
It is one way. A friend of mine works for HP in the storage division, and it used to be, oh my God, we doubled our worldwide storage of data, every
Mhm.
3 weeks or every 3 minutes now. In any case, good morning, Ben.
Good morning. How are you?
And doing well, and Todd and Greg and Steve and some other folks jumping in. Good to see y'all. How was the convention, Ben?
Hmm?
What was the convention? David was just asking. Didn't you go to something recently?
I went
Yeah,
to a
I'm curious.
local. Oh, I went to a local B-sides. It was in Roanoke. They had a bunch of talks and some CTFs and but it was pretty cool. It was one of the very few things that I can find to do locally around here and in Virginia within the central area.
Wait, where are you at in Virginia?
I'm in Lynchburg.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
over in Chesapeake.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, it was in Roanoke is where they had it, and it was a lot of fun. I don't get a chance to be nerdy so much in my current role, so I was like, I had forgotten all my CTF skills, which was really pathetic. But we still, me and my friend placed second, which or at least
Oh,
we tied for second, which wasn't bad considering that neither one of us had really like kept up with it. It made me want to do my try hack me stuff more often.
yeah, I need to get back into that because it is true. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, that is
100%.
exactly right. Yeah.
hmm
So it was and it was like easy stuff too. I was like, oh man, I know this.
It's like I could have done this a year ago.
Oh
Know
yeah,
exactly what to
easily.
do.
So, but they had a class on sub gigahertz frequencies and playing with flipper zeros and stuff, and that was
Ooh,
one of the CTF is where you had to go around and scan different things and
I
find
have one of those
frequencies.
in my hand right now. Just pulled
Yeah,
it out of my bag.
same. And but it was really cool is they made these neat little badges for us, which was really cool. And
Oh, that's
it was,
awesome.
I mean, it was included with the ticket, which was only like $20, and it was like this a little, it's a Pico Raspberry Pi with an NFC reader,
What?
and you basically went up to other people and you scanned it, and at the end of the event they were like, well, we started a worm between all these Picos, and every time you scanned it, you propagated it.
Oh
It's
my
like, that sounds like fun. So like that, all these different colors. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, I don't get to be on the other side of the vendor table at a lot of these, so
Oh yeah.
it was a lot more enjoyable.
Oh, that's really cool. I gotta get into something like that. That just
And do
sounds like
you
a lot of
power
fun.
off your phone and leave it in the trunk of the car for something like that? I mean,
You disable Bluetooth, disable Wi-Fi.
Oh no,
absolutely.
I'm full bore
Absolutely.
all the time. I'm just like whatever.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this second time in July, last time in July. We're gonna have a little office hours here, and it's kind of fun to hear what Ben and some of the other guys have been up to. That is in a collateral space. Our friends of the White Hat Hackers. We really appreciate you guys staying educated and on the edge and all that, and spreading the knowledge. And that's something that we love about this whole thing that we're building here at SaaS Alerts is we definitely have a platform. It's definitely a piece of software, but some of these people that we've met at conventions and we've met professionally, and then we've sort of stayed in touch with in LinkedIn and everywhere else is building. It's as one partner said, where you're building something here isn't just about software. So for you to take your time out of your day to not only make your platform a little more easy to use, but to kind of do that stuff, we really appreciate that. Um, Always the question at the top. Tell us what's going right, man. What's making you happy? What's making you smile? What challenges are you seeing? Anything weird you're seeing out of your clients? Any success stories? What's going on, folks? It's the same answer every week, Ben. Same
No,
answer
that's not
every
true.
time.
Sometimes it's more interactive and
Fine, I'll do one. I'll do one.
Thank you, David.
So, I mean, it's only caught, I think, I think one actual event so far, like malicious event, but just the ASN respond rule that I have. I mean, it catches, like most of the things it catches are, personal VPNs, but just the fact that it wouldn't have been caught otherwise, if it doesn't match any other respond rule, if it's not a outside approved location, and it's just having that option there has been like one of the happiest things that I've come out of SaaS alerts for me.
Thank you,
Just
David. I
that
appreciate
that
that.
particular thing. Oh yeah. And then the Discord, we got that whole community there.
We have a
We have a
Discord server?
Discord. I didn't know we had a Discord. I know
I
it
didn't
hasn't
know.
been linked probably ever, but yeah. Yeah, so the ASN rules, respond rules, definitely a win for me. So there you go. Next person.
And Stephen was kind enough to post something into the chat. And Stephen, help me understand, what am I looking at here about device info?
Oh,
Mr.
you're on mute,
Cole?
Stephen.
What Stephen shared, if you're not looking at it, it's a ticket where we don't have any device information. And so we see Karen at was doing something in SharePoint, deleting a file, some sort of a spreadsheet, and the device info isn't populated. Microsoft is pretty good about giving us device info. They don't do it on every single thing. So that might be why we're seeing this. We might have to dive in and take a look at the details in that particular alert. But
Well, that one should be an unknown device. If you see incomplete device data, that's probably where you're going to see that, Anthony. Like it's funny. So the way Microsoft does it is they have like the initial sign-in gives us a whole bunch of information, but then activity after that event lacks a lot of information, but we're working on a way to kind of tie that back to the initial sign-in, and hopefully should be able to have unify with many more events. It's, I guess, the cheap way to save a buck is like by removing like a line of text or two per event. I guess it adds up, maybe, but it definitely makes like the events that you would want to have Unify work with a little bit more difficult. But I think we discovered a solution for that.
well, I can't believe we're actually going to continue to expand the platform and add functionality.
Well,
Shocked I am.
well, that's what happens when I spend a week in the logs.
Yeah, and that is one thing to be cognizant of is again the alerts we get out of Microsoft are quite rich for IAM events, and then once you're inside of their ecosystem, they figure everything's sunshine lollipops, and you might get less. I'm not saying usable data, but you might get less data than you might want. And then it also might be presented in a way that is absolutely suiting Microsoft's needs and not ours. So, and this is not strictly to Microsoft. We're seeing this out of Okta. We see it out of Salesforce. So,
Google's
yeah,
worse.
yeah.
I looked at some
Yeah.
of the logs from Google, and it's like, really? Nothing, huh?
Yeah.
A device
Yeah.
signed in. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's there's very little enrichment there. Yeah, Microsoft are pretty good about giving us 60 or 70 fields for a lot of the alerts, especially IAM things. But Google, if I get 24, I'm kind of surprised. Any case, thanks so much for sharing that, Stephen, as well. If you have any more questions, just give us a shout. We're happy to dive into that.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Oh, absolutely, absolutely, Stephen. Um, Ben, anything top of mind for you other than you can start to see daylight from the logs?
I didn't say I didn't see that. No, no. We're still continuing our uh, setting our policies and procedures up with MSA. But I think after we're really up and rolling and things are going smoothly, correct me if I'm wrong, then I think I'll be able to really provide more insight on these sort of meetings.
Mhm.
And I envision being able to at least throw in some some stuff that we see, minus any sort of PII.
Yeah, there is always that. How do I anonymize this and make it useful? Um,
But
I
other than that, I don't know. I assume we've talked about perfect data software in one of these meetings, right?
if we haven't, I think that, and good morning, Austin, one of our newer onboards, a gentleman named Austin is joining us. He's not from Austin, so that confused me when I was talking to him. I actually, Austin was a gentleman that I might have mentioned about 2 weeks ago. He came up with an interesting concept about how do I identify a single factor login. And so that was an interesting uh, idea that I hadn't thought of and that Ben and I have been kind of tossing around.
Oh, yeah, we
And
made a rule and Discord for it.
oh, did we? Okay, fantastic. I
Hmm.
had forgotten that. Austin, take a look at Discord. I think you've joined us there, and check that out. Take us for a test drive and let us know if you like it, if you tweak it, and what you would change. Um, Perfect data software. If anybody here isn't familiar with EM'd software, perfect data software, there are a number of really nice applications out there that would back up your Gmail or your email and things like that. Absolutely legitimate. And some of them are free or almost no cost, and they're great. Problem is it's like any tool. A bad guy can leverage that. If somebody logs into my buddy Daniel Sapp's email account once and installs that software, then we get to hear about all of Daniel's travels and his sales adventures and everything else he's doing. And I never have to log in again. But that is persistent. So if you guys aren't familiar with it, take a look at in the Analyze module. You can look for everything that's being OAuth into, and you may catch it there. There's that fantastic in the reports module. There's the fantastic shadow IT report that will
Hmm.
show you while you're prospecting, or as a nice monthly snapshot or quarterly, which users are OAuthing into which kinds of apps. And we're always looking for, less than perfect behavior. If, again, I'm going to throw my buddy Sapp under the bus. If I see Daniel Sapp using his company credentials to log into, Amazon or Apple or whatever, it just shows that that's not perfect. We would like him to not do that with his company creds. Because if he starts thinking that's okay, where else is he going to use his company creds? On a dating site? Maybe he's going to use some wares software or something. I don't even know. But it just shows that that's bad behavior. So again, technical, detailed. What else can I do with that? Ben,
Match.com. That's what he said. Match.com, what Daniel said. Let's see.
oh, but Ben, let's kind of dive into perfect data software itself because that one is scary. And if anybody has anybody actually seen EM client or perfect data software used legitimately?
No.
That was
I
really
know.
definitive no.
Yeah, most MSPs have their own SaaS backup programs, I've found. But Perfect Data Software has been out there for a little while. There's an article back from 2023, but the more recent one from this year was EM Client, and we're still seeing a lot of that occur. That's basically just a way for, I put the article in the chat too. It's a way for them to exfiltrate data. And I mean, the software has perfectly legit uses, like Anthony said, but it's just like anything. It can be weaponized, like Screen Connect. A lot of scammers use that to gain remote access because it's free to spin up. But I want to show you how we can detect against the installation of this application into your environment, as well as the usage, which I think is also important, just in case you have this set up and maybe you installed SaaS Alerts a little bit too late and you didn't catch the initial connection. So, and this is also a rule in our Discord, obviously. So we're just going to watch out for EM client. And I'm going to select Microsoft. I'm going to do it for everybody. And the couple things we want to look for, we want to look for SaaS integration, and that is the initial connection of the software into your Azure, but also OAuth. And that's the usage of that particular software. Now, without filtering for literally everything, what we can do, we can add a filter to this and do description details contains EM client. And same thing with perfect data software. You can do the same thing. You could even combine those and say, or perfect data software. But this one, I do see this happen quite frequently and still today. So it's something that the bad guys are using, and we see it, pop up on our environment. So it's definitely it's out there. So watch out for it. If this does occur, the things you're going to want to do is to go into the environment, find this enterprise application, and I'll show you real quick where we can find this. Don't hate me. I'm going to use azure.portal.com because I don't acknowledge intro. It's going to take me there anyway. I don't care. So we come in here and we'll look under the enterprise applications. And most likely what you'll see is it lurking around in here. And one thing you want to do is, remove that. So let's find one of these guys. And we'll just go into properties and delete. Once it does, it's really fast. So if this does occur and one of your clients falls victim to this, you may want to let them know that it's quite possible, depending on which one it was, that their files that they have access to in SharePoint or OneDrive, their emails, consider anything that is in there possibly now public knowledge. So if they have passwords stored in their OneDrive, or they have bank information in their email, and that all needs to be monitored really closely, because once they've exfiltrated it, they honestly have all the time in the world to go through every single bit of your email or files, because it's on their stuff now. Let's see. Is there a rule to turn off users being able to? Yes. Add enterprise. Yeah. So there's a Fortify recommendation that what it does is it says the publisher has to be verified in order for you to add these applications. And the problem is Perfect Data Software and EM Client are both verified publishers with Microsoft. It's not hard to get. I'm talking to our developers about adding an alternative option, and I think that even may come with this next release of Fortify, which is the ability to kind of customize these controls, is to say, okay, well, don't really care about this so much. I mean, they're going to get around it. But if I say, do not allow user consent, the administrator will be required for all apps. It does add a little bit of work on your side, but it also prevents them from adding whatever application they want to.
That would basically disallow an end user from putting anything they wanted on. Is that correct? They'd have to open a ticket to have somebody install it for them.
They would have to, as soon as they went to add something, it would allow them to require consent from the admin, which is I believe handled internally with Microsoft's. Why isn't that that is a great question.
Yeah.
I guess Microsoft's
Todd,
crazy.
it's no, and it is. That's exactly, and think about it. Let's go back 20 years or whatever. Microsoft had to build a product that was easy for an end user, my mother, to figure out how to just plug in Adobe and plug in, all the stuff that she wanted to play with. They had to make it easy for people to, people to adopt this. Google makes it a lot harder. So they obviously were born in the cloud and they grew up in the cloud. So they always had a very different perspective on this. But to get this stuff actually rolling and get people to jump on and use this in the 80s and the 90s and moving forward, that was Microsoft's philosophy. Let's open every door and window and force an IT professional to start closing things down. So it's absolutely root to their philosophy.
It's like
Now,
firewalls sometimes. It's like the default policy can sometimes allow every traffic, and then you have to go through and like really like fine tune it.
exactly. Now,
But
Ben, flashing back to our platform, I did
mhm.
see. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there anything else on the screen you want to talk about, Ben?
Yeah, at the very least, you should be doing this very middle one. We have seen applications that have been loaded onto an environment that are custom written, and they're allowed the hacker or bad actor, I can't call them hackers, the bad actor to gain some sort of access to the back end here through pretty much allowing any script to be run on your computer. You don't want to do that. So at the very least, do the published. But if you can get away with it, definitely do the consent.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I saw one partner do is he identified the top 10 applications, Adobe and this and that all of his clients in
Mm,
his stack would actually use on a regular basis. He allowed them to install anything they wanted on the Microsoft portal, but he built a respond rule that says if, as Ben was demonstrating, a brand new a brand new SaaS integration, if it, are you sure you know how to use this software, Ben?
nah, it's been a while.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, he set up a filter that said if it's Adobe, allow. If it's Autodesk, allow. If it's Zoom, allow. And if it doesn't contain one of those words, block that account or at least send him some notification. So that I thought was a really interesting way of doing this that gave him visibility, even if it didn't stop anything in its tracks. Now, maybe another rule running alongside that, like what Ben was demonstrating. I know I've got my allow list, and I know I've got some bad guys applications that I would always want to stop above and beyond, EM client and perfect data. Ben, any ideas? Do we have any other frequent flyers, or I don't know, should we develop a list of known bad actor software or names? I mean, that's going to be an awful soft and moving target, but I wonder if we could find a way to collect that.
So far, the only ones I've really heard of are the EM client and Perfect Data. Those are the ones that we see actively right now. Not that
Fantastic.
there aren't other ones, but like usually threat actors will try to make custom applications and try to trick people into loading them that have really no legitimate purpose and but definitely are not published with Microsoft. So that's why I said choose that middle option. And that I think there's a fortify control for it too. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, that's one that why isn't it the default, Todd, is a great question. Well, why isn't it the default for security professionals like all of us standing in this room? Let's see,
Let's
notify.
see. Ensure user consent application have is not allowed. I think that's probably it right through there. Yeah, the consent permission, Microsoft best practice. So Microsoft's best practice is to do the published verifiers. But this is, like I said, this will accomplish that.
It's
Microsoft's
checking that box. Okay.
recommended. Yeah. I
And
like I said, I personally prefer the you don't load anything until I approve it, but that's just me.
and is there well, and kind of going down that path, I know there are some things that Fortify can't manage. What is the policy that says disallow an end user from doing this at all, period, full stop?
That's what I think when we release customize controls here,
Mhm.
I think that will be one of those options. So instead of, you only having that option for Microsoft's recommended, you go that step farther and you say require consent, which I would think in theory would still give you this, 1.4%. Woohoo. But, it's because it's a lot stricter.
Right. Right.
And I think
Ben,
when you request consent to, you're presented with all the permissions that application would have access to. And that's the clincher. Like, these apps that are being loaded, what kind of permissions do they have? Do they have the permission to read your entire mailbox and do whatever they want to, send on your behalf, things like that? There's so many permissions you can have within the graph system. So good review.
excellent. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody have any questions on allowing, disallowing applications by the end users themselves or EM perfect data software or any of that? right, not a lot of noise on that. But
I
yeah,
missed the beginning, guys, but I'll look at
oh,
it later.
you missed so much. You missed so much,
Hey,
Enrique.
where are you at, Enrique? Looks like you're at a show.
Exchange security.
Oh,
But I
very
couldn't miss
nice.
my Anthony and Ben deals since it's every 2 weeks. I had to sneak out.
Well, that's cool. Have you learned anything interesting or new at the show?
Yeah, that I'm doing everything wrong.
Oh, isn't that great? Oh man.
My parents said that, my priest said that, my wife said that, my ex-wife said that, my other ex-wife said that. I think
Oh.
I'm hearing a theme here,
I
Summary of the
sorry, Angie. Hey, this is DJ. Hey, I think from our side, when it comes to applications, and unsure if you guys talked about it because I jumped in a little late, is specifically we have also started tracking failures for EM client and perfect data software because failures indicate compromised credentials, right?
Okay.
Unsure if you guys discussed that, but we actually built a respond rule to do that because those applications are normally added. So the moment it is attempted, even if it fails, it means compromise.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
No,
like
that's
that.
good to know. Thank you, DJ. No, that's really cool. I'll have to work with you on that one.
Todd asked if there's a report that would provide a summary of application permissions. And Ben, thinking down that, I think, do we have anything like that? Because what I would really like out of Fortify is to be able to just bang out to a spreadsheet. Here's every control that's in place and ones that aren't. I don't think we have that just yet, do we?
No, I think they're working on that specifically is almost a way to evaluate an environment, how it stands, what applications are there, what permissions they have, as well as other settings like mailbox forwarding rules, stuff like that. Things that you don't have visibility on in our platform until they happen. But when you're just onboarding somebody new, you don't have that visibility. I think that's something that we're working on.
Yeah, because that's been a halfway frequent ask, and I've let the dev team know that it's like, a status report for prospecting. I'd
Yeah.
like to know, not just I can see it all in the GUI. It's like, oh, it's a pre-existing condition. It would be nice to be able to dump that out to something that had a little more intelligence in it.
Like a network detective for M365, something like, okay, well, this is all the stuff that the last guy did that was not right or didn't catch or something.
And kind of talk about this in onboarding a little bit. If I can look at those pre-existing conditions, now I have some concept of what the end user's experience is. What are they allowed to do? And you get a brand new MSP comes in and changes that. That's not really a technical exercise, but it's part of the package. You're going to change their world and what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. And are they going to fall in love with you, making them more secure, or are they going to hate you because now they can't share things anonymously? It's like what's that going to look like? So, thanks for the last couple of guys that jumped in late. These are always going to be saved on YouTube. Enrique, you look like you have either a waggling finger or a question. Wag
Yeah,
the finger.
I'm waving
Bad dog.
someone down over here.
Oh.
So a question, right now you mentioned SharePoint, it triggered, I was looking the other day, is there any Fortify rule to turn off anonymous SharePoint sharing? I did not believe I found one.
I
That
don't
is a
I was gonna say, I don't think that there is, because it would have to be something that applied to all the sites. Let me see here. I'm looking real quick to see. We have ensure
I know we
SharePoint
do it
guests
manually
cannot
by
share.
going. Yeah, you have the one so guests cannot share something they don't own.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for one that we usually go manually configure so no one can share anonymously.
It's a good one. Yeah, let's take that back to our team and see if that's something we can pull off.
Absolutely, yeah. Because there's so many places that we can make that setting. If I can make it a GUI, I'd make it simple for you guys that have got so much else on your plate to do, or make that part of your default process. I would love to do that.
And something we can customize too, which would be good. So like not just maybe there is one SharePoint site that you do want to allow anonymous to sharing from, rather than just a blanket no for everybody. No.
First we kill, then we allow.
Is this back to first we kill all the lawyers and then we figure it out? You know, Shakespeare was not wrong. Guys, I know there's been a bit of a wandering conversation. We've got plenty of time here. Has anybody else got anything top of mind that we can dive into? Anything burning your
Yeah,
biscuits?
I got a quick question.
Stephen.
All right. So I've got this respond rule, which pretty much detects brute force successful attacks. I don't remember if I got it from a template or not, but pretty much after about 30 authentication failures or some large number of multiple authentication failures followed by one success, we assume that that's a hacker who was successful and we block sign in from the entry account. We're receiving false positives. The numbers are climbing. So what I want to do is I'm finding that all these false positives all have Unify matching device. So I'm trying to add some sort of filter that says don't trigger if the device is actually mapped to a Unify.
High
Just can't
confidence
figure out how to
device.
do that.
Idea.
I'm
That's really
seeing
good.
I'm seeing some filters that are legacy but will still work. So I'm just want to clarify the right way to do it.
That's a
I
really
don't
good
know the
idea. I
right way,
like
but
that.
we're going to make something up on the spot.
Yeah. So usually with this one, I kill off the last part because it's kind of redundant. But let's do filter of the authentication successful. There's a couple of things we can do. You can add an exclusion for mobile OS devices because they're not going to be like known typically. And then we'll also add an and we'll say that the account has a device mapped to it. So they have a device, it's mapped, we're good. Because if you don't add this, then people that don't have mapped devices, everything's going to be unknown. Don't want to do that. And lastly, since we did change this around a little bit, do status. I don't mess with confidence rating, but I do come in here and say, okay, well, is this unknown, unmanaged, and unknown? And that's the one that I will alert off of. So if I say, okay, well, in order for this rule to fire, it has to be an authentication success from this unknown and unmanaged device. It's not a mobile, and they do have something mapped to them. This should cut down on a lot of the false positives. You could also take it a step farther, and I think there's going to be some changes to that rule too, because of the false positives. At the time this was written, filters wasn't a thing, Unify wasn't a thing. It was very early on. So what you could do is you could say, or, is this coming from a known anonymous or VPN? So if your clients don't typically use VPNs, threat actors do, and pretty frequently, you could add this as another condition if they didn't, or you could also throw it in with Unify too. So, but I like your thinking a lot. This is a great way to use Unify.
Okay, and I'm just wondering why we're putting the filter on the success auth rather than the failure. Is that because the failure is just like any other noise and we just,
Yep.
If it failed, it failed.
Yeah. Failures you're going to see a whole lot of constantly. And the reason that you're getting the false positive is because the person that owns the account is coming in, signing in for the day. Hey, it's a great day. And boom, he hits that mark. And so this is always counting up. It's constant. And then they sign in normally. They're going to have a bad time.
Yeah. Actually,
But-
what I'm seeing is that the failures are also coming from his unified device, and the agent is SSO, Office Online Core SSO from Chromium, which is
Oh.
so, anything.
Yeah. And it could be sometimes I see that with the browsers syncing, and if they have Edge synced with Office and it's like backing up everything, and all of a sudden that connection's broken, Edge is going to stupidly retry over and over again. I don't think it even tells you that it's broken sometimes. So that might be causing it.
But
Usually
either
good.
way, we're going to put the filter on the success.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
No problem.
And just from the top, Ben, you started playing with that template that's already on the platform. What's that one called?
Brute force attack.
By that guy again.
Yeah, I'll say I have
So
to
while
fix
we're
this.
on this one, can you remind me again, guys, what the Entra AD when we're running the script in the RMM? Would that be just for devices joined into Entra AD?
We see it a couple of different ways. Definitely if they're joined, but sometimes even if Office is installed, like see, sometimes you install Office, and one of the last things it'll say is, do you want to allow Microsoft to do this for just this application? And if you leave that unchecked, then I think sometimes it'll reach out and grab an ID, and so when you sign in, but
So
definitely
that's
when they're
what,
joined.
okay, so yeah, so because we're seeing the majority of our devices which are not joined, but
Mhm,
do have Office, and if you go into the customer's portal in Azure, you'll see an Entra ID,
mhm.
but
They're
they're
sneaky
not
about it.
populating in the RMM.
Hmm.
So we get most of our unified, we've configured since day one. And
Mhm.
last time you guys gave me some instructions, I went and reviewed them. Everything's configured correctly, the data RMM, admin permissions, etc. But we're still not getting ID on most of our devices, so they're all unknown.
Do you get them on some of them, or just most of them are
We do
unknown?
get them on some of them, and I noticed
Mm.
they're more the ones that we have Entra AD joined
Hmm.
or on Intune.
Yeah, I'll have to see if there's a rhyme or reason, because that is something that we run across. It's obviously it's great if you can pull that. It's not the end of the world if you can't. So what it does is that Entra ID does replace the external IP address as like one of the primary metrics. But if it's missing, we'll still use the external IP address and host name and machine and username, stuff like that. So
Okay, then I'll open a ticket because I think we're unknown across the board.
if you are unknown across the board and you're not picking up anything in SaaS, then yeah, just let us know. We can hop on and take a look at it. A lot of times it's the mapping, but I've seen you're not the first person that I've seen have issues with that connection with data, because it does some weird stuff, but we can help you out with it.
Perfect, thanks.
For sure.
And our friend DJ mentioned that in addition to divert back to some of our earlier topics talking about EM client and the rest, that apparently Apollo AI has been used as a threat vector to reach in, and some sort of sales tool to reach in and start yanking out address books and Lord knows what else. So
Interesting.
I have a question about rule schedules. But I would also love to know if anyone else has any like known enterprise applications to be on the lookout for, like ZoomInfo, Perfect Data, EM Client, and Apollo. And so ZoomInfo is actually used for the same thing as Apollo, just basically to steal address books, but it also tells you the net worth of basically the companies that these email addresses work for. So it's a good figure target.
Man.
But anyway, so
Yeah, for real.
I'm hoping to find a way to make like a schedule so that during the weekday and like when we're awake, we have like a very strict reaction, right? Like we're going to block sign-ins, reset passwords, all that. And I was wondering, um, and so then have another response that's either always on or is only on after hours. And I was wondering, like if you have a rule that goes from 5 p.m. in the day to 8 a.m., is that really just going to run till midnight, or is it going to run till 8 a.m. the next day?
I think it does 8 a.m. till the next day. I know what you're talking about. I've seen that in other platforms, but I think ours actually works.
Sweet. Awesome.
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it
Oh,
was the reoccurring option down there, and
I would.
again, I've played with this a few times.
Yeah. No, but I know, because they're like there's some platforms that like they only run until like if you go from 5 to 12, that's when it stops, and if you select 8, it gets confused.
Right.
But I see here. Let's see. So do 1,700 hours. But I'm pretty sure that that's not the case with us. But sometimes they'll even error out if you
Awesome.
give them the option.
And what we're looking at right here is that looking at GMT. So notice at the bottom there that when you're building this, it's going to also reflect back to a universal standard. So if your browser, if you're traveling, if it's because that's where this is
Yeah.
When you're in our GUI, a lot of the things you're going to see on alerts and everything else are going to be time date stamped and reflect your browser settings. So whatever your browser is inheriting from your OS, which is why we always want to give you a nice note back there that says, hey, if there's any question, GMT,
Awesome.
Yeah. And if you have any questions on that, there's a great knowledge base article, Big Blue Help down at the bottom left. And I think you just type in time zones or whatever it is, and it'll kind of walk through that detail about where you're going to see different things.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, solid question, Austin. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that's one that I've run across too, and I'm like, is that really going to work? I was like, but yeah.
Todd, I do want to get back to your question, but DJ asked, Austin, what would your use case be for only turning these rules on when you're out of the office? And this is something we talked about a long time ago. Is like, why would I not want that rule to run when I just left to get a cup of coffee in the middle of the day?
Right. Well, I think it's like it's down to at midnight, I can't respond, and if it's on a weekend,
don't want to.
Well, so it's not that, right? It's like I want to respond with the minimum amount of action that kicks them out until we can deal with it on Monday, right? And so it's not about not want to or whatever, but like if there's a rule and it detects session theft, and you void the session, what does the threat actor know, right? Like they have the password, but you voided the session, so the MFA token is not good anymore. You know what I mean? So the password's known, you're going to have to look into it, but like, so anyway, so the legitimate user can then get right back in. And, especially since we have clients that are going to be working on the weekends and stuff, but not that we necessarily want to be. So anyway, so that's kind of like my use case, is just responding with the minimum known threat or the minimum response possible to get the threat actor out, and not necessitate us necessarily getting involved, except in the cases where we have to. So anyway, so that's
Oh, no, I appreciate that, Austin. I had one partner that I mentioned on a call a while back that said, you know what, if he sees any indicator of compromise, he just does a token flush, kicks the bad guy out. End user, oh, I have to put my password back in, and they go right back to work. They don't even open up a ticket. They don't even know what happened. So, sorry,
Well,
DJ, were you trying to say something there, brother?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you then, Austin, during the day run a rule that blocks the account temporarily, right? Because I wonder, why wouldn't you flush sessions throughout the day itself too if you detect that same activity, right?
Exactly. And so that's kind of was my other question, because right now I have two, and we only set up our tenant a few days ago. So I'm still trying to figure out which way I want to go. But one is always on, and then the other one is like on at certain times. But I think it's better to just flush the token all the time and then have like a more strict response when you're available to respond to it. So anyway.
Yeah.
So then it kind of, and I'm sorry, DJ.
Yes. So my team is a little bit different than most teams in the fact that we operate 24/7, right? So there's always people for me to respond. But no matter that, our response rules, all of them, just always run, right? Because taking action to respond is so much quicker than having my team look at the logs manually and then take action. And knowing how short the time is, threat actors need to do malicious stuff, right? We have seen that be helpful, because sometimes when we don't trigger a respond and it's actually based on manual alerting, right? Or manual alerting based on alert, we see that the threat actor has already sent out spam before we are able to take action and things like that, right? So then we still have to deal with that.
Well, then I think I have another question, and that's if y'all can think of anything that would necessitate a stronger reaction. So like if there's like a new authentication method made from like like a bad IP or an unknown device, then you can't just be expiring logins, because they're just going to get right back in. Like what are the use cases for there to be a stronger response needed? Does that question make sense?
I'm gonna refer to Discord. I think in Discord there's a whole set of rules Ben Anthony built out that indicates a lot of indicators that
Sweet.
require a strong response.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind that we ran into not too long ago is we had somebody that reached out to me and said, "Hey, you know, we had this rule fire off. It did its job. It expired account logins, but then the bad guy was right back in there." And I'm like, "Well, that's weird. I've tested it. I know it expires them." Turns out the user didn't have MFA enabled, and
Oh
like Austin
no.
said, the password's captured with token theft. So the guy just
Yeah.
hopped back in there,
Oh
and he didn't make
no.
the same mistake of creating that rule again. He did other things that were not considered malicious, like sharing out files and everything. And so something to keep in mind, that I think that kind of addresses your question of when we should take stricter action, especially if you have people that don't have MFA, like block them completely. I think we are, and Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're talking with Amanda of being able to incorporate some of the account statuses with these
Yes.
rules as well. Yeah, so if one of the conditions was met, so person does not have MFA enabled, then block their account, versus someone does have MFA enabled and expire their sessions.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of the things that, and for anybody who hasn't heard the story, we started out, 5, 6 years ago now. Do we want to look at static things? Like everything we see in Fortify is not really dynamic. It's static. We put a policy in place, we're done. Or did we want to build a widget that would look at the dynamic changes? User logs in, user deletes a file, things like this. We decided to go down the dynamic path. And I think that was the right decision. And we got a ton of great data, and then we built the original part of the platform. And then as we sort of perfected, or at least managed that better, that's when we started to come back and look at statuses. What was the last login date? Is this policy in place? Is MFA in place for this user? And just because of the way we built it in the beginning, it's really hard for me to combine both of those pieces of data into something like Respond, but that is coming, absolutely. And that's so if we had those qualifiers, okay, I would just expire account logins, or do a token flush on this if I saw some IOC. But what if that user did not have MFA enabled? Then I would take a different action to lock the account as well as expire tokens. So yeah, that's something that's absolutely coming. We're just not there yet.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. It's a good discussion. Ben, if you want to kind of shift gears for a moment, Todd had a question. How do you deal with SaaS VPN like Total that reports a different IP than the office when it comes to building rules? How would I identify? I think the question that kind of jumps to my mind is, I have a client that actually uses VPNs on a regular basis. They're either that's the architecture I built for them, or they're technically capable of. How would I differentiate that from? Could I differentiate that from VPN traffic that was suspect?
I would do something like this. Total identifies most of their IP addresses. So you could do, I'm gonna spell their name wrong. Is that how they spell it?
It is.
So if they are identifying their IP address ownership as Total, you could make an exception for them here. As far as Unify, if you're asking about that, where the IP address can be different in your RMM and Microsoft events, that's a little bit of a pain, and we get some false positives there. The Entra ID is the best one to use in those instances, if at all possible, because it would overwrite that, and it would be not the main metric. But yeah, Total's
correct me if I'm wrong, Ben. That would require you entering in all of the POPs and keeping up to date with the POPs IP addresses, unless you have your own static IP address that you've purchased from Total.
Yeah, it would. Well, as far as this rule or Unify in general.
Any rule that you're making based on those IP addresses you're entering in.
That's where you can use the ASN name. Most of the Total ones we've seen do have Total in the value here. I don't happen to have an IP address. Do you have an IP address for Total? We can definitely take a look at it.
Enrique, you've got some input there?
I was going to ask if we have so we use different SASE solutions and we have fixed IPs on the gateways, which we whitelist and at the company level on SaaS Alerts. Do we have to do anything to use them and respond rules, or do they automatically, since they're whitelisted, take into effect? Or
The only thing that would change is if you're doing anything that's outside approved location as a trigger in one of your respond rules, then your whitelisted ones are not going to ever, reach that criteria. So if you wanted something specifically to flash on outside approved location, but also take into account your fixed IP that is whitelisted for other purposes, you might have to make some changes in the respond rule for that to account for that.
okay, that just came to my mind. Pretty aggressive measure, but sometimes we'll have we deployed a new SASE solution, and not all users will log in automatically to the new agent, and it doesn't log in automatically. So it just came to mind. Maybe we can say block any user that logs into 365 not coming from the SASE solution, and that'll force them to log in. Kind of like a conditional access on the Microsoft side, but from the SaaS Alert side.
You can do that. Just to jump back to the total, as far as the IPs. So I looked up one that has total ASN names, and here's a good portion of their IP addresses. But if we type this into our threat feed information, it is identifying that the ASN name is total. So we use that with respond here to say if this IP ASN name does not contain total. So in this instance, it would be from a VPN that's not total. Or you could just be like, boom, just that. So that might be a way for you to not have to enter individual IP addresses. No one wants to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, Todd. I think that, and especially it's such a moving target with IPs. The ASN is fairly regularly updated, and maybe that does open you up a little bit, but I think in general, that's going to be the best way to get there with the least amount of effort.
That's funny.
And Todd also asked in the chat, and you answered him, but sort of let's bubble this up a little bit, comparing devices that are Intune or BYOD. And I know that our dev team is working hard to pull out more and more data out of Microsoft on Intune. Anything that you can speak to about that?
That it is definitely something we're working on. I think that's the goal for, I can't say this quarter, but maybe possibly next. I know it's before the end of the year, is to be able to pull that information in, which I think would be great because we'd be able to, like mobile phones are assigned Entra IDs and connect successfully. So I think we'd be able to support phones then as well, which would be amazing.
And let's be clear, when you say support phones, that means maybe to identify and track, maybe not so much manage, but at least I can use that as a qualifier to help me understand this. Yeah. Okay, you heard it, guys. Ben said it'll be done on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of other MDMs that we want to work with. One of the big ones is, what's the one? It starts with an A or something, I think it's the Big Mac one. All the Apple's devices.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name. Yeah.
Adtran, not joking. Something it says something like that. No, but it's that one's a pretty big ask. So
I think that one's named Adigi.
Yes, yeah, you got it. Thank you. Knew it started with an A. That's as far as my brain went. But yeah. How about by carrier?
Isn't the ASN, AT&T labels everything as their ASN, or puts AT&T in the ASN field?
I would think so.
And Verizon, because I see those getting smacked around a lot. Yeah, AT&T services.
Yeah, so it would be, I mean, like they have a buttload of those. The ASN is going to be, like I said, you're probably your best pal when it comes to that sort of ones, and that should identify, because there's also on our Discord like a discussion of malicious ASN. There's like IPXO limited, and there's a couple other ones that show up that have been known to allow malicious activity coming through.
I thought that was a Russian nonprofit. How can a nonprofit be evil?
That was Noobs at Inc. NUBES, I swear. But we see and like those are great ones to pay attention to if you see like activity coming from an ASN that you don't recognize, that's not normal, it's cause for some investigation, or even just, I think, I can't speak to a timeline, but we want to be able to have, I personally want ability to be able to report suspicious activity in our system and to generate our own kind of threat feed that we can use to identify that's not so much isolated just to our environment, but that we've seen, as some of the threat feeds are, even the ones that we use, I don't know if I'm gonna say they're old and outdated, but they're just, if you're not pulling the latest information, it's not doing you any good.
Well, and it's funny, just in the last couple of minutes before we break here, guys. One, thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate all of the time that you guys spend with us, helping us make this platform better and discuss this sort of stuff with everybody else. And two, keep bringing us those questions. We will see you on this meeting again in 2 weeks. I hope everybody can join us this Thursday for the office hours. I'm sorry, office hours for the community call, the SaaS community call. We've got some good stuff coming. But kind of back to what you were just saying, Ben, this was one of the ideas that we had years ago, was we've got a meta view. If I'm seeing all kinds of bad activity scattered across all my different clients from one source, why would I not be able to identify that and maybe even push that back to the conditional access policies for all of my clients? So that's something that is a big, monstrous lift, but we've never lost sight of that. And so I don't want to promise that anytime this decade, but it's something that we've always wanted to do. And we've been doing so much with machine learning and repetition that way. But now that AI has really begun to come on, I think that someday soon, maybe, next year, we might actually be able to bake some of that in.
Yeah.
That's the hope in any case.
That's exactly what the whole managed SaaS Alerts platform is going to help us to get to. It'll help us identify things that we should be alerting on that maybe we're not, or new rules that we can create to be able to catch these bad guys. And pretty much anything that we're going to be using in MSA is going to be available to you guys. Any rules that we come up with, or any Fortify templates, are going to be in the community. They're going to be able for you to use, even if you don't sign up for MSA. So we're not going to be hiding any secret sauce from you.
All right. I think that's just about it. I do have a meeting here in about 3 minutes. Everyone, thank you so much. Safe travels to and from your shows, and give us a shout, holler at your AMs if we can help with anything until we meet again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Ben.
Anytime.
Later,
My
guys.
pleasure. Bye, guys.